What's up, guys? Welcome to episode 42 of Convos on the Pedicab. I'm here with my boy Chaz Luciano, better known as Chaz Bro Chill on Instagram. So, in case, just a little backstory. Me and him made a couple YouTube videos. We did a little MTV Cribs edition on the homelessness situation on 7.
We're here to talk about.
But we're not. We're just a little backstory.
We're here to talk about the culture war.
We're here to talk about a lot.
Crypto future and the pandemic as it's taken us.
But it is part of the culture war because we did make culturally. We made videos that were designed to make a statement, and we did make a Welcome to Austin video that I put out in like May. But yeah, Chaz is right. We're talking about something that's far bigger than that. I just want to like introduce you as someone for context.
Oh man, I'm nobody. I don't need context.
All right.
Just hear my words and take them as they
are. So you were in New York this past few months, right?
Yeah, I spent the holidays back at home in good old Eastchester.
How did it feel living in a communist country?
Yeah, man, my life avoids most of that. You know, the things I did were relatively unchanged. I still got to practice jiu-jitsu. I still hung out with my family. Although there were some, like it's really hard, man. And I really do think that mentality changes a lot between that place and this place, because the town Scarsdale where the first cases were, that's the house my parents were in. That's within the circle that they drew. Like the first circle is like, this is ground zero to the pandemic. And tell you what, I was on 4chan in January reading about this, like asking people about N95 masks. So as somebody who was very willing to take this as seriously as it warranted, you know, the more we sat here and learned, the more I was willing to loosen up. And I think I had to like being down here, that's a lot easier because the general mood and mindset was such, you know, like people were generally away from the whole idea of masking up, which, I mean,
people are a little more reckless in the South than they are.
Yeah,
and it's in a good way. It's in a way that I actually like, because it's in a way that like kind of like promotes freedom and personal choice and people like letting loose and having fun and stuff. Like even when like you go out and party in New York versus partying in Austin, the vibe of people partying in Austin is like noticeably different than people partying in a place like New York. Yeah, this
is a very drunk city, I will tell you that much. And
well, it's a city where people don't care.
I mean, look, you're not going to compare the New York vibe to anywhere else that isn't like absolutely massive and multicultural. It's like I had to learn how to not walk like a New Yorker. I did it in like Gatlinburg, and there's like a prowl you do where you focus your eyes to the direction you want to go. So if I'm passing over your left shoulder, I'm going to look just right over your left shoulder. We're never going to make eye contact and get into that weird, like, shifty moment. I'm just looking over your shoulder, and then we get really close. We just do that thing, and, you know, like a billion people are able to live on top of each other all at once.
Which is gross.
Yeah, it has its upsides and its downsides, man. Like, there's no place quite like it. And,
I'm wearing a Seinfeld shirt. Like, there are a lot of things about New York that I love, like going to Yankee games and like going to museums, and the fact that you were like exposed to a ton of diversity and like really good food.
That's the thing. Yeah, there's the best of everything there, just because there's so much fucking money right at the heart of it. And I think one of the things we're seeing, because there's a big conversation about whether New York's like on its way out, is that over the last since the internet's really become the primary way of interacting with the markets, people have been able to move away from New York City and away from the big exchanges. So maybe the money isn't quite as powerful, because like when there's rich people, there's people who can serve rich people. So like the best chefs and the best tailors and the best of everything are going to show up to, you know, get a little piece of that pie. And if that goes away, then yeah, New York City probably goes away in the sense that it's, you know, one of the big centers of American culture.
Well, it just will no longer be considered like a tier 1 city.
I don't know what tier 1
is.
Well,
they divide cities into like tiers with like based on based on
Austin's my tier 1 city, bro.
I agree. Like based on like how much money people have.
What's your favorite part of Austin?
My favorite part of Austin is honestly the culture and the fact that it's super accepting, and like how easy it is to like make a living.
So the people?
Yeah.
Okay.
The people and the weather. The people in the weather.
Yeah.
Are part of Austin.
My favorite part is Barton Springs, son.
I love Barton Springs. That's what I'm saying.
My first day in Austin, I found that out, that was here. Just like smack dab in the middle of things, you've got a cold water pool, and I can just get wet every single day as like a part of living in a city.
Yeah, it's the best form of cryotherapy in the world, man. It's so good for your body, so good for recovery. It's like meditative.
It's good for the soul.
It's great. But yeah, you know, it's 100 degrees. You jump into Barton Springs and you feel great. And then when it's like then aside from like a couple weeks ago, it never really goes below like 40. You know what I mean? Like even in the winter,
kind of tight.
it's
I
like,
didn't take that dip when it was snowing. I didn't have a 4x4. I didn't want to walk.
No,
I bitched out, guys.
I understand, man. I empathize with you. But what was it like in New York? Like, is it as bad as people are saying it is? Like with New York being like super shut down and everybody being like paranoid. Like, how do people feel about the virus in New York? Like in comparison? And I know that you used to actually take this a lot more seriously, even in March, because we were having debates. We were having debates on this virus.
All right. Well,
like back in the spring, and you were like, kind of more siding with the stay-at-home crowd versus anybody else at first.
And I still, like understand the necessity to make that decision then. Like, you got to realize the information we're working with. Like, you can make a decision and then look at it in light of everything you know now. And you could say, oh, that decision was justified. But when the first things coming out are, we have no clue what this is and people are just dropping dead, it's better to be in a position where you can now, like, calmly approach that potential future and then, pare down your defenses as the reality comes more clearly into view and you find out that, it's basically just killing old people and it's kind of like the really bad flu and, there's some long-term effects and shit happens and we're an unhealthy fucking country. Like, there's a billion factors that go into how we look at it now. But it's always easier to take down the fence afterwards than it is to put it up in the midst of the fucking hurricane.
Well, and then the news media was like overhyping this virus and ramming COVID down our throats.
Well, once they started doing that is when I started chilling out. Like, I'm not going to say so much as just to be contrarian, but the red pill is that everything you're portrayed by, like, the big money media, the people who aren't individuals creating content, has some sort of message, and I don't necessarily think it's something that's sat down and planned on. It's not like there's a cabal having this discussion so much as it's a set of incentives given the money the market's created, like the systems we live in create these incentives that then you have these big corporations that want you to act a certain way because you're easier to market to and you're easier to control and predict. And once you recognize what they're telling you, you can start to try and tease apart why.
Yeah, but there's also an agenda that these corporations are being paid to promote.
Paid by who?
Well, I mean, the people that are owned, like, what is it? 5 companies control basically the entire media.
Right.
So those same heads of media are going to meetings at like the Council of Foreign Relationships. They're going to like the Bilderberg meetings. Like,
I think you're putting the cart before the horse, though.
No, hold on though. They're giving heavy amounts of money to politicians, prime ministers, senators, like people, within our government. They're all buddy with like the Bill Gateses and the Faucis and the Rockefellers.
Yeah,
like these guys are all like it's a circle of elites.
I've seen the charts, but
it's like George Carlin. Hold on, wait. It's like George Carlin said, like it's a big club, and you're not invited. And it was basically, it felt like the media was like overhyping this virus to promote an agenda of a specific club that we will never be invited to.
So I think with regards to the club, you're putting the cart before the horse, and you don't go to the club meetings to learn this ideology. You get invited to the meetings because you've already taken this ideology because it's what serves you in this world of, markets and decision making, right? So like, I think it's dangerous to go ahead and view the problem as this thing radiating outward from like a source. Because that's not necessarily what it is. I think the source is culture. That's when I say the culture war, I literally mean we need to create alternative means to live our lives. And that goes for everything from what you listen to and consume as entertainment to what you consume as food.
And I agree with that. And I agree with that. But then here are the other concerns. And it's that big tech is literally censoring entertainment that they don't deem suitable for their own interests.
Yeah, it's terrifying. But I don't think that you're going to solve the problem through a Twitter post anyway.
You're not.
The problem gets solved when people see individuals actually operating in this sense. And I think it's already being solved, and I think it's underway. I'm pretty sure we're going to win because, like, the values of liberty and justice and self-sufficiency and being independent, meaning not reliant on other things.
People are a lot more mobilized and a lot more appreciative of that stuff. I know for me, I've grown a lot more, like, appreciative of, like, how great it is to, like, live in the United States after seeing videos of people getting their asses kicked by cops for not social distancing. You know what I mean? In other countries, and people getting fined thousands of dollars for being past a kilometer from their house. You know what I mean? So like you see that stuff, and you're exposed to these videos, and you read about what's happening in other countries and what people do to like anti-lockdown protesters in other parts of the world. Yeah, like this has made me like super grateful to live here, and to like really appreciate like the American values we have. And I'm not the only one who feels this way.
Certainly not, bro. We're the dopest country in the world. You need me to like chant along with that?
No, we are literally we are the greatest. Like we are amazing. Like there's no better country than the U.S.
But we is what? What is we?
What do you mean we? Like America?
Who's we? America?
The United States.
Joe Biden's America. Nancy Pelosi's America. Are we? Are they part of our we?
The problem is they don't want us to be part of their we.
I don't give a fuck about their we. I'm not trying to be in nobody's club but my own.
I understand that, but this
so
also
you
brings.
Well,
hold on,
but
this
starts with you,
right? But it also comes. It also comes down to like. That also comes down to this big culture war, and the culture war is such that like. You have politicians in power right now.
They're not culture though, man.
But
I will say there is a thing coming along. The meme politician is a thing. Trump was the prototype. And maybe Bush was the prototype because he's kind of a little flappy monkey meme. But really it's come down to people approaching politics as this game of awareness and like popularity through digital means. But that's not how people make decisions.
Yeah, but Chaz,
though. But I really think they're making a mistake. It's so shallow.
When you're making laws and passing legislation without any regard for the people that you're governing, and you're passing this legislation in a deliberate attempt to try and keep people poor and increase poverty, which is what these lockdowns literally felt like. That's what they were trying to do.
That's what power does. That's what power always does.
You had a group of elites that came up with these laws and used a virus as an excuse to make a bunch of authoritarian laws that are designed to systematically keep people poor. And the reason that it's failing is because we still have means to protect ourselves from that. We have
people are poor because they don't have the tools to make the things they need. And they need to rely on this machine in order to survive. So the poverty comes from the fact that they are unable to provide. They are dependent. This country was meant to be independent. It was meant for individuals to be able to make decisions for themselves. And as long as those decisions don't rub up on other individuals' decisions and their rights and their ability to have their property and liberty secured and whatnot, they were able to do what they wanted to do and then come what may. And you could see what happens when people make certain decisions. But as long as you're completely beholden to a supermarket to eat, you're never going to be able to make a free decision independent of the needs of that supermarket, and therefore the whole system that supports that supermarket, including the trucks and the diesel and the war in fucking Iraq, it all comes back to this necessity for us to be fed by these industrial means. And if we stop doing that, we have a chance to make our own decisions and to create our own culture, our own nation, our own people. And we don't need anybody who isn't able to provide for themselves to join in. They can live in their cities and do their shit.
I agree with you, and I think that there is a growing movement of people like you who are gravitating towards that. I know personally, like, I don't want to live in a big city anymore. I'd want to buy like a single family home away from things so that I can have those freedoms and have that autonomy. And then you couple in the winter storm, and it really shows how scary it is to be completely dependent upon a system that you have no control over how effective it is and how well they have your vested interest at heart.
Nobody has your best interests at heart but you.
That I agree. Or your close-knit.
You can't even create an economic incentive strong enough for somebody to decide that they'd rather you get heat than them.
Yeah. It's nobody cares about your vested interests other than you and the people closest to you. And I think that's what people need to understand, is that this whole like virus and this whole like situation with COVID and all the protests and everything, it's got to really illustrate the point. It's got to bring the point home of like genuinely caring for the people closest to you, because that's what you got. That's all you can rely on. Like, you can't rely on the government. You can't rely on a job. You can't rely on a corporation. You can't rely on our power grids. You can only rely on yourself and the people that you care about. And that's why it's so important now to like be a good person to other people, you know?
Family is the new punk.
Does that make sense? Like, it's so important now more than ever, like, because you need to be a good person to people in order to survive and live a healthy, happy, prosperous life where you
that's
actually
not entirely
have freedom.
true.
Like,
Let's not pretend like the incentive doesn't exist to be a shithead sociopath. Like, I don't know. You got to approach this with the cold reality. I prefer people around me. I prefer that environment of love and caring, and I think that that's a strong environment that creates healthy people that are, spiritually able to approach this changing world.
I think it's a lot harder to be. I think it's a lot easier to be a good human being than it is to be a shithead sociopath. Because when you're a shithead sociopath, nobody looks, well, nobody looks, no, but nobody will look out for you eventually. Because eventually, like,
well, you trick them into thinking like,
yeah, but eventually, like, after you
exist.
screw over enough people, you're like the circle of people.
Well, so
that
here's
you find,
a fun fact. So that you're right in the ancient sense, where a sociopathic human would generally be figured out by his like tribal group. There's not enough people where you keep screwing over people, and eventually they catch on and they off you. But now we live in a culture where you can just dip from place to place to place and find new people to scam and new people to scam. And there are people who live their entire lives like that.
Yeah, but do you want to live your life
like
that?
No remorse. No, me personally.
No, that just sounds like a horrible way to live, right?
I don't know. It sounds kind of fun. You ever see Catch Me If You Can?
That was a fun movie, though.
Shit's dope.
That was great, yeah.
Like, maybe it's a lot easier in the 70s before they got cameras everywhere, but like...
Oh, and well, I feel like it would be a lot easier for people to like go live that type of life 30 years ago than it is now, because now there's like the internet, there's social media, like it's
but that's just a new venue to scam people, bro. Come on. No, how many fake advertisements are out there on every bit of website?
I always get DMs like, hey, grow your brand, do this, do that.
Everybody's doing all this shit to get you. Like, it's always been there.
But that like literally brings about the importance of why it's you need to have a close group around you because of all these new threats that are like popping up.
Sure, yeah.
Like there's so many new threats that are popping up that we never even like were aware of, or that I was barely even comprehending like 2 years ago or a year ago, right? No, about 2 years ago, 2019.
I'm afraid of drone weapons.
That and all the crazy cameras and the surveillance, and it's like...
Combine that with a drone weapon system, and now you have targeting and destruction of any face you want. Like, it's getting very much to the point where the only safe place to be is deep in a hole.
Well, that's also why it's important for people to learn how to like actually become independent and self-sustaining, because the only way out of this nightmare that we seem to be headed towards is self-sustainability.
Yeah, I'll agree with that.
So like that's the thing. So like, how do we become more self-sustaining? Like, what do we do? Like, what's the like what are your steps? Like, what are you thinking about?
Well, it's attractive to dip off the grid, like disappear somewhere, like stay as far away as possible from whatever's falling out. Because I think we all recognize that like the fuse is lit. Like, the thing might already be blowing up. This whole America experiment with, like, inflationary debt. Like the way order is kept is not the same as it was when I was born. In like the 80s, the way we looked at it then. There's a lot more uncertainty in the American government and our place in things. And so whatever you do, wherever you go within America, you're probably running into a crowd of people that are fleeing cities when shit all does go down. So it'll be good to be out there and like self-sustaining on a farm with a bunch of goats and a bunch of guns and a bunch of good neighbors. Like have your own little area of culture, and hopefully you got high-speed internet. But like,
honestly, with all the stuff that's going on right now, wouldn't even want that.
I don't know. I think that's well. So this is the thing. It's if you just go straight up disappear. Like, avoid interacting with the world at large. I think you run into a number of problems. One with it, like, I don't know. I think I'm personally, at least, socialized to be around lots of different people, lots of different times. And, like, if you got even like 50 people living in, like, your little community, like, who's to say, I don't know, you're not gonna want to see more people. You're not going to want to be a part of something bigger. And my train of thought's like kind of scattered here because you want to know what I think I should do personally?
Yeah.
Like personally, yeah. I'm rolling around until the wheels fall off. I got my RV. I'm bouncing from place to place and little cove to little cove of like people I enjoy being around, and I'm just gonna do jiu-jitsu and try and eat good food and have good times, until this shit all winds up in the air, and then I see where I land. Like, I'm pretty good at going to new places and figuring things out. So anticipating that the world's going to be a certain way and investing a lot of your present effort and resources into, any one particular farm. Like, because if you have a farm and it turns out that area, I don't know, gets really, really shitty with the climate change or whatever it is, like, you've put a lot of effort into something that ends up being worthless. Or, I don't know, if you get a whole bunch of Bitcoin and then the government just says it's shutting down Bitcoin, and like that turns to nothing. Like, yeah, there's going to be utter chaos if that even attempts to happen. But like, staying too committed to any one course of action, I think, is the way you wind up not landing on the other side of this whole thing. Like the machine's going to break. Parts of it are going to stay intact. Like Amazon will still exist. New York City will still exist. But it won't necessarily reflect like the relationship it has to the parts at large. Like Amazon as a corporation versus Amazon as a giant thing that moves things, like not necessarily a business entity, but a monopoly on transportation in America for some reason, because they're the ones who are able to keep it together. And like they've got the best network and everything runs through them or whatever the fuck it is. You ever read Snowpiercer?
Oh, no.
Not Snowpiercer. Snow Crash, I want to say.
I have not read that.
I'm going to give it to you. It's dope. But basically, your citizenship as your American identity is as meaningful as the people around you let it be. And so if we all decide that our relationship to Amazon, or your social credit score based on like your Instagram posts and shit, like we can focus culture around new things that will they will exist. They're existing now, but it'll probably look very, very different in the way these things relate to the world around it.
Yo, how do you feel about the reset?
I mean, you know what it is. It's the fucking that's their plan. Like very, very clearly and obviously. Look, I don't even blame the motherfuckers, right? You make better decisions than most of us, but like, there has to be a system. Absolute democracy is fucking retarded. Absolutely, like universal democracy. I'll say this and I'll fucking mean it forever. Universal democracy is a bad idea. All right, less than half people are smarter than me. Promise you that much. Think that number's a lot higher. Think that most people shouldn't be allowed to make decisions for me personally or any other intelligent people I know at large, because there's too many dumb people in a mass voting in blocks, being led around by fucking sugar cookies, and sung songs to, like the children. And like those people, and we all know those people, and if you don't, then you are those people, and I'm sorry, but you shouldn't be listening. They can't tell me what to do. How does their judgment supersede mine? Like, in what moral universe do they know what's right and wrong, all right? If I want to eat mushrooms and if I want to fucking smoke weed, if that's something that doesn't affect other people, how is it that there's people getting arrested and people have to fear literally getting locked in a cage? Like, what? That's never justice. That'll never be justice. The only way that could ever happen is if somebody inflicted that on me. There's no way I'd make the decision to, do that shit. So I don't see how a world where we just let everybody willy-nilly who's in this geographical bounds and certain age bracket or whatever the fuck that criteria is. I don't think there are criteria that I would consent to randomly letting others decide what I should do with my life. I know what's right and wrong. Like I think about what's right and wrong. I try to do what's right, not what's wrong. And that's up to everybody. That's what liberty's about. Like, that's what individual freedom's supposed to be about. And then when your right and wrong rugs up on other people's, that's when we have a system to deliberate those disputes. Like, that's what I would think of America as. And
yeah, but I think that this reset kind of like fundamentally destroys like what America's founded on.
It's terrifying.
It's like
it's
being
downright
being in a horror
terrifying.
movie. And aren't they replaced? So I could be wrong on this, but isn't there like a plan to try to replace like the dollar, the yuan, and all the powerful companies with like the SDR, like some kind of
There's
universal
probably
crypto or
tons of
something?
plans, man. Like, shiesty people make plans all the time. I just getting too caught up on one iteration of a plan that you've seen or heard about, just like keep looking at what's happening. What's generally happening is middle class is getting hollowed out. Big business is making all of the gains. They're expanding to take up most of the economy, and most of the transactions in the economy are going through these giant clearinghouses.
But also, wait, a lot of small businesses in Austin, like kind of like there were a lot that failed, but it seems like in Texas or in Florida and like some of these other red states, like the small businesses are going to be okay.
Some of them will, and some of them
I mean,
won't.
like someone like that sounds callous, right? But like
No,
in
it
comparison
doesn't,
to like, in
man.
comparison
I
to
get
maybe
it. No,
like
businesses fail anyway. Like some of these businesses would have failed regardless of COVID. You know, some of these people would have died regardless of COVID. I think it's really easy to fall into the trap of these single lane worldviews where you define your world by a single factor, and that factor could be race, that factor could be gender and roles, and that factor could be whether you're wearing a mask or not. But like, it's a big fuzzy picture, and anybody who's rolling through with like absolute certainty and like bumping into other people is doing it wrong. Like, there's no way you could be so damn sure that like this is the right way, and you have this many people disagreeing with you. It's like, yeah, sure, there's going to be stupid people out there.
No, and I have no idea what the right approach to doing a lot of what we're doing is. But I do know one thing, and it's that you shouldn't force your approach onto other people.
Mostly, yeah.
And that's what it feels like. The media and like, you know, a certain political party are trying to do.
How far are you willing to go with that, though? Like, obviously, I'm allowed to force you to put my kid down. Obviously, I'm allowed to force you off my land if you're stealing my food.
Of course.
I don't know if that's obvious, actually.
No,
like people would disagree with that.
Although
So I can't
there's
even say
some places are
obviously.
passing like laws saying that you can't even do that, or they're proposing certain amendments saying that you can't like respond with force to somebody doing that to you, which is like insane. But I don't know, man. I think that like, you know, forcing somebody to have to like get a vaccine in order to be integrated into society for this virus is something I'm really uncomfortable with.
That is frightening me as well, and I think that that's one of the reasons that the having alternate means of having alternate societies, you know, places you can go and you can survive without partaking in this giant machine.
We need that because there's so many, dude. There's so many people who are willing to like force that stuff onto people, and you could just see like even with the mask thing, like you have people that are like trying to force mask wearing onto all of us. And like, I'm not like anti-mask or any of that stuff, right? But when you have like that many people that are like in unison, like harpies almost, like wear your mask, wear your mask, wear your mask, and like trying to like like doing it in a mob.
It's lonely people,
but
man.
But it's being done in a mob mentality. But it's being done.
So,
it's being done in a mob mentality, and
I think I get what you're saying.
Yeah, like that same mob would probably say, "Hey, I don't want. You shouldn't be allowed to go to work or go to school if you don't have a vaccine."
And that's why we don't let democracy do its thing and let the mob decide. That's why we try to limit our lives and the impact on our lives. Like, we should have as little as possible to do with people in Washington. And I know that's a hard ask, you know, especially if you're not willing to live like a lot illegal. But the more we have alternative places for people to go that aren't participating in this giant corporate industrial machine where we're all kind of being tracked and checked up on, like, as long as that's an option.
But you also need money. You also need right now money to be able to buy land and do that. And you need to like,
yes.
And that's why it's so important to invest intelligently. We got like 5 minutes left, right, Charlie? Yeah. So just the last 5 minutes, like Bitcoin's been going ham because of this shit.
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of that's FOMO. I think it's as valid a store of value as any other, in that the only real value it has is as a meme, which is the same as the dollar. Like, you can't eat it. You can't knock a door down with it. So, like, that leaves agreed upon value, which is the same as dollars, the same as gold, for the most part. I mean, I think if there's going to be some kind of digital future that looks nice, that looks like something I want to be a part of, I think that there's some kind of smart contract-based cryptocurrency acting as a backbone to it all, kind of in the way that HTML backbones a lot of the internet that we work with today. So having projects pursuing those goals, I think in the long run, that's where the smart money is going to be. In the long run, that's where the value is. So if you're actually chasing value and you don't just want to play the markets and the daily swings and just be, you know, jerk off gambling, you can definitely look into Ethereum. And I would say Monero does another interesting thing in terms of being as close to untraceable and untrackable as possible. Like everything else, like Bitcoin's obviously very traceable. Everything's recorded in a ledger. You just have to figure out which address corresponds to which person's actions. And like,
you know, it's funny, like just to close out, I think I understand too why there's like such a big rush to like buy land and be off the grid, because people are so scared of like what could happen if everything starts crashing that they don't want to be around. They don't want to be the guy holding the bag, the figurative bag. Like they want
to be anywhere near the blast radius, bro. You want to be on a sailboat somewhere far the fuck away with a lot of plants and a lot of animals. A little plot of land somewhere no one's gonna fucking bother you. About 30 people max. Like 4 families, 5 families.
You need to start developing those close relationships right now, and you have to
start. What do you mean start, bro? Hopefully you're well underway.
If you haven't already, right? Like I'm.
Well, so how do people do that, real quick? What do you think is a good way for people who don't necessarily have these relationships to maybe foster something like that?
Jiu-jitsu. Join an MMA,
totally agree.
Join an MMA gym, and at the very least, compete in a jiu-jitsu competition. You can do that in 6 months to a year of training. You automatically make a whole bunch of new friends right off the bat through doing an activity, and there's a brotherhood that's involved.
Shared hardship.
Yeah. So just that's it's not as hard as people make it out to. You have to find if you don't have meaningful connections with people, you have to find that immediately. And if you have that stuff, you need to hold on to that for dear life, because things are going to get really bumpy, and the only way to avoid this blast radius is to keep those people around you.
What do you think about a church?
I think anything that fosters a real sense of community is a good thing.
So, what if we made a church?
Church, synagogue, mosque, it doesn't matter.
No, like a new church, though, because I don't like all these religious connotations and whatnot with people having very clear pictures about what God wants from you, and, it seems very orderly in a way that I'm not. But
I'm not a big religion
I would
person.
totally. Well, I feel like all of because I'm thinking through my closest group of friends, and one of the ways I got them mostly through sports, through shared, adventures, troubles, and whatnot. But jiu-jitsu is another one. It's a shared hardship. We beat each other up and whatnot. But we all kind of agree on a certain value set: liberty and justice for all. In the sense of, if I'm staying in my square, it's none of your business what I do. And if I come into your square, there's a price to be paid.
Yeah, and I also think that
what if we had a religion? What if we had a church that was around that, and then you could set up church events? You could have a chess club and a jiu-jitsu club,
We can elaborate that more, maybe after the episode's over. But I think we gotta really do a better job. All of us have to. We gotta find our circle, and we have to really stay within. We have to really stay within and nurture the circle that we've built. That's really the best way to put it. But anyway, this has been an all new episode of Convos in the Pedicab. Chaz, before we go, how do we get a hold of you?
I'll find you.
All right, sounds good. Thank you, guys.